This is Entrepreneur Authorities, where we talk with the leaders, builders, and thinkers helping entrepreneurs make smarter decisions in a changing world. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your startup, or just getting started, get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to take your next big leap. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today I'm once again joined by Wes Chaar. Wes has spent his career at the front edge of technology, from contributing to the U.S. space program and Mars missions to leading major advances in data science, machine learning, and AI. In his new book, Data Independence, he examines how companies and governments track our digital behavior, build detailed profiles of our lives, and profit from information most of us never realized we were giving away. Today, we're talking about digital breadcrumbs, privacy, data ownership, and what it will take for people to regain control. Wes Chaar, welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
Well, good to see you, Joe. Thank you for having me back on. Good to see you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And the reason I wanted to get you back on is because there was a chapter in your book, Data Independence, that I think is very prescient and obviously very top of mind for a lot of people these days. So the book is Data Independence, but chapter 3 of the book is Following the Digital Breadcrumbs and the Money. And as we know, it always comes back to the money, Wes. You describe how companies follow our digital breadcrumbs. What are the biggest breadcrumbs people leave behind every single day without realizing it?
I mean, honestly, it could be as simple of you, Joe, walking to a retailer, correct?
Yep.
And you bought something and you're paying, and to many people, this always happens, you're paying at the register, correct?
Mhm.
And then the associate on the other side or the screen asks you, do you want a print receipt or do you want an email receipt?
I'm an email receipt guy.
Well, guess what happened the minute you said email? You don't know the details of what that email, giving your email means. And that email fundamentally is, guess what? If you think of Joe as a 360, you basically found a hook to get to this 360 of Joe. And you say, well, what? I just gave my email. I didn't give anything. But what's under this email, probably there is a clause, we can market to you, we can blah, 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 do with your email. So guess what happens? You take this email and you go look for companies that have the other picture of Joe. And suddenly, just because you bought, I don't know, a Nike shorts or whatever you did at the retailer because you're going, to go, I don't know, race a half marathon or a marathon, or you have whatever you bought. Guess what? That little breadcrumb, which was just giving your email, gave basically the 360 view most likely. So the reason, people ask you for that, or your phone number, sometimes they tell you, or your phone number, or this, or guess what? These are simply hooks to get the 360 picture. And you say, well, who has my 360? It's all the other companies that whatever. And then, put them in other companies that have a bigger view. But the minute they do that, then they have a full view of Joe and they want to attract Joe or market to Joe or this and that, and it depends on the companies. This, some of them is really about marketing, advertising, but others honestly is to understanding, Joe as part of other larger pool of consumers. And then how do they fit this into product design? I don't want it to always to think it's not really only about marketing, advertising. All the companies do that. So if you tell me, someone told me once, well, what other companies, if it's not advertising and marketing, it's about product design. It's about supply chain optimization. What do you mean supply chain optimization? Have you ever wondered why everyone in a zip code who orders something, it's always available within 24 hours in your zip code? How could that be? It's because they understand the composition of the zip code, who's whatever, who is likely, that it is guaranteed within 24 hours. That's just-in-time optimization. It's called JIT, just in time. That you get whatever shipped. They can even probably influence you to buy something to get rid of something in the warehouse so they can get other whatever. This is how sophisticated it is. So the hook is everywhere. The other hook is obviously, yeah, I am online. I accept it. The cookies and all. No one reads what it really means. I accepted this. I accepted that. I read this. I skipped. But the simplest one is, when you go to a retailer and you just bought something, there's no loyalty program, there is nothing with them, and they just ask for your email address or your phone number. Guess what? Now you're part of it. You left a breadcrumb. The other things is, a friend of mine was telling me, why is it seems that whenever I say something on the phone, the advertising come very quickly. I said, there's probably an app somewhere, dude. You didn't know. And actually, your phone is listening to you rather than whatever. And then the phone is whatever. I mean, it is that simple.
You know, it's funny. We talked about this last time. We've talked about a bunch of times, you and I, this idea of trade-offs, right? So the trade-offs we all make in this case with the retailer and my email is I don't want to have to drag around a receipt, which I will most likely lose. So I will happily give them my email, not knowing all of the information you just broke down, but also these tiny trade-offs where, like having the listening devices. Like we all have these devices like an Alexa at home. We know the trade-offs is, yeah, someone's probably listening, but man, how much easier is it to get the weather by just asking Alexa about the weather? So what do you think about that? This idea that we're all accustomed, like it's Facebook. Like Facebook is free because again, all this 360 view we're giving Facebook that then they can repurpose, reuse, sell, and all that jazz. This idea of trade-offs, is it?
Sure,
It is
sure.
what it is, right?
Well, I mean, we enjoy many of the, if you want to call it, things that these capabilities provide. I'm not saying we should be against it or something. It's really two things: an awareness, because once you become aware, I mean, you know the saying, correct, Joe? There is no free lunch.
Right.
Why is Favors giving me this for free? Why are? Oh, come on. I mean,
Yeah. The other phrase that
reason
people love to use in your world is if it's free, then you're the product. Did I get that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's talk about that. The reason it is free because the ROI on how much more they can get from your data surpasses the fact that you're not paying for anything. So the question becomes to you, Joe, knowing that your data is so valuable, do you want to be part of that economy and make maybe something out of it? Do you want to be really say, you know what, I, Joe, maybe have a different set of acceptance, correct, of what people can do with my data versus Wes or versus Catherine, my
Right.
daughter, or versus my my son Alexander, correct, or versus whoever. The point is, we all have different, if you want to call it, permissions and control and consent, correct, that we want to be able to manage ourselves. So the book never was really about making anyone, I'm not interested in making big companies evil, whatever. I'm simply saying, let's understand how we got there. Let me tell you really what's at stake. And I think what's more at stake is AI, today's AI. I mean, AI is not powered by magic. What is AI powered by?
Information.
Your data.
Yeah.
Joe's data, Wes's data, content data, all the data. Why do we think we shouldn't understand that and be part of the economy of that, if you want, the data economy? Let me give you an example. How much do you think is the advertising media marketing business in the United States? We are a $24 trillion economy in the US. How much is it in the US? It's 1 trillion.
I figured
This is it's advertising alone. It's roughly basically 700 billion digital programmatic, 750 billion, something like that, and the rest, and all the other meat. That's 1 trillion, just advertising. Supply chain, using your data. Product design, your data. If you understand what your data, maybe 5 trillion, if not more, of our economy, if not more, is driven by your data. You know what? Why don't I need to understand that? I want to be in control of that and see, how my data is used. And the reason that's important in my mind is because if we collectively understand where technology is going, we want to make sure that technology is serving humanity, not we get to a place where humanity is serving technology. And that's really the thing. The reason I bring this up, because I'm not against technology, and I love technology, but I want a technology that serves us as humans, not we end up with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people pretty much controlling these mega companies, or even, and then they're deciding where technology is going to serve humanity, because we want to have a voice. So this is what I call in the book the data vote. And the data vote is fundamentally something that every citizen, and I don't want to call us consumers, but every citizen is deciding consent, control, and how to currency their data, how their data is used, and whether they're getting something out of it. And when we collectively, each one of us makes those decisions, hopefully, in our voting, we're taking technology where it should serve us, not where basically we are serving technology and we are serves to the technology itself. rather than technology serving us. And there is a difference, between both. So that's really the purpose. And I don't disagree with everything that you describe and how cool it is and how it makes our life easier. But I think people are simply not aware.
I want to click on aware and awareness. When did you realize? Because you've worked in data science for decades. Was there a specific moment where you became aware or realized, "Hey guys, we've gone too far with this. Like
Well,
we're not doing this right."
I was aware of how data is being collected and whatever, but there was an aha moment in my career. I thought that oh wow, I had another cool idea, and it was really about working on a capability which I called at the time contextual audience ad scheduling with sentiment. So the idea was understanding the data, who Joe is, who the audience is. It could be even more than Joe, correct?
Yeah.
What kind of context, what kind of message shall I send? Because I have a high probability of creating not only the right behavior, but also a sentiment, creating a sentiment in you. And I remember when I thought, oh my God, I could do. And then there is this moment very quickly after that. Who gave me the right to even, although it's legal, to trigger a sentiment in another person? Is this personalization or is this now becoming manipulation of behavior? And there is a difference. Am I personalizing something that Joe, and the line is very fine,
Yeah.
correct? And when you go to someone's sentiment, who do I have the right, correct, to play with someone's feelings, correct, based on what they said today on a social post, how they're feeling about things, what we understand, and whatever. And that was the aha moment. And the aha moment simply to say, we can do better than this. We need to educate our fellow citizens about this, and let them make their own decisions. It's not really about taking, maybe they decide, hey, you know what, we don't care about our privacy. Well, if you don't care about privacy, and I make the case, then you don't care about your freedom. And then I go back, well, the genie is out of the box. Well, and then I think I made the point in your last podcast is it's like someone saying, well, you know what, I really don't care about free speech because I have nothing to say. We can't do that. But I think if you put this in front of people and they become aware, then they're gonna ask for some things that are guaranteed, that they can you really control their data, that they can really truly data vote in a very easy way about what's accepted, not accepted. They can also monetize their data potentially. If my data is so valuable and you're making all these trillions, you know what, I wouldn't mind some significant check, whatever that comes to me just for using my data. Or someone says, I really don't want to be part of that because I value my privacy like nothing else, and I do not want to be part of that. I mean, the spectrum is wide, and people will make their decision within it.
I'd like to unpeel that onion a little bit about personality and sentiment, because I think if you say to most people what they're feeling is their personality. So did you, when you had that sort of aha moment, the idea of sentiment and person, how did you separate the two? Because I think for the layperson and anyone that's active using technology, they are what they feel, right? They are almost like
Yeah,
it's like the ego, it's the living ego living in the technosphere.
sure.
So how did you
So, so,
separate
so
the two?
Sure. So at the time, it wasn't really towards one individual, but it was towards an audience. So let's just think, for example, I don't know, a Gen Z or Gen X.
Okay.
You have studies of how typically, I'm not saying everyone in Gen X or Gen Z think about that, but typically a Gen X, let's just say, or Gen Z, think about this particular topic in this way, and they think about it, which drives this feeling. But if you have more information about this very particular audience who maybe commented or had other, you can even zoom in that feeling. That's why I said it's propensity probability.
Mm.
It's never 100%. But if you're getting close to 80, 90% and triggering a feeling or whatever, a sentiment, then, the more you're going to get data, the more, things become even more one-on-one depending on what's allowed, not allowed, correct? Then you're going to get to something pretty almost deterministic. It's never 100%. But how I look, and I'm a Gen X, correct?
Yeah, me too.
I look at things. I think I look at things differently than my kids who are, I'm a Gen Z, my 21 and 23-year-olds, and but it's a generational thing. But if you know how Wes will react to something, and I know perhaps more data about Wes or an audience like Wes that I'm targeting, then you can put some whatever that is very, very likely to trigger a particular emotion or feeling. And that's how it becomes pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for breaking that down. Now that you mentioned this whole Gen X, Gen Z thing, I would love to pick your brain on this because you are seeing, going back to feelings, this feeling bubbling among Gen Z about anti AI. We're
Hmm.
recording this after all of those commencement speeches that went viral of people walking out on keynote speakers once they mentioned the two letters AI, and there's like a pushback even online. Like if someone uses, I think there was like a story a little while ago about someone using AI for their ad. It was like a local like restaurant, and people were like, why are you using AI instead of hiring a designer? So there is something, I think mostly coming from the younger generation, Gen Z. How are you feeling that's going to play out? Because if you go to Silicon Valley, AI is everything. Like you can't have a company that doesn't have like AI enabled or AI infused in the slug line, or no one pays attention. You go outside of that bubble, and there's obviously a lot of pushback on these data centers. And how do you think this is going to play out? Because you come from a world of trying to track sentiments and see how people are feeling in a certain way. How do you see that playing out in the world of AI?
Okay, so let me maybe step back. With every technology that we've seen, correct? It's really about automation and efficiencies, correct? And increasing, cutting costs and increasing revenue. So these have happened all along. This is not new. The difference is with generative AI, which is basically what we're talking about. A lot of the jobs, in terms of what people you'd call them white collar
Yeah.
jobs, correct? Whether you are someone working in the legal department, you really need a paralegal now. Questions are asked, correct? With all the capability you can do with AI, do you really need a software developers? Software developers are struggling now. I swear, almost every week I get 2 calls minimum of a software developer that I have known, whatever, that lost their job or in my network. And why? Because these capabilities can do their job. And what I'm observing, talking to my kids and their generation, is that I'm going to a college, I'm getting this degree, but AI can do my degree. When I started a few years ago, what am I going to do? So the reason is, what is it that we really invested in? I think what is happening today is that the rate of automation and the larger pool, correct, that this generative AI can take over is now being felt by not only, honestly, the Gen Z, even the people that have 10, 15, or 5 or 20 years of experience. You know, I'm getting, like I was mentioning, Joe, calls. I lost my job because you know what? Uh, they can decide with agentic AI, a number of agents that they roll through the company. And guess what? These agentic AIs, they can do coding 24/7, not,
Right.
not 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. And then, yes, you need a smaller staff to review the results and whatever. So the acceleration of automation and productivity went beyond anything that we've seen. And what I'm seeing is a lot of anxiety, correct, on how we do this. Now, the people who have kept with AI are saying, I understand, for example, software development, but I'm also an expert in AI. So I can work for a company to make sure whatever its AI is creating can do this. But even if everyone does this, simply, honestly, a lot of the jobs, excuse me, have shrunk in terms of demand. And then the question, what do you do? I was actually on a call earlier with someone from India, someone who worked for me way back when I was managing a team in Japan, Indian guy who moved back to India. And he says even some of the companies that used to outsource, even the outsourcing to India, because like we don't need this much outsourcing, because actually, or we can even automate this with AI. I don't need necessarily as much outsourcing in India. So everyone is feeling it. This is a big question, honestly, a policy question, and what do you do about it? I know everyone says, "Oh, learn AI." Of course, you'll be more valuable if you learn AI with your job, but I'm not seeing yet the new jobs that will be created because of AI, correct? And that's the thing. Now back to the data centers. Obviously, it's impacting electricity costs, water resources, this and that. And you're seeing probably all around the country, it's communities that don't want the AI center in their neighborhood, and why. And that is the this clash, correct, of what we do with data centers. So I think this requires a national conversation. How do we make, back to what I said earlier, technology serves humanity and not humanity serving technology, which was really, so when I look at Gen X and your question, they're very valid question, but I'm not sure we have all the answers yet. No.
Yeah. Let's get back to the data part of it because you worked in many industries, airlines, advertising, retail, media. Just so we get a level set here, which industry surprised you the most in terms of how aggressively it uses personal data? Was there one industry that was more, and again, nothing illegal here, but
No,
was
no,
there one
no.
that did something more aggressively than other industries? Any stand out to you there, Wes?
Well, I would say from my pool of verticals that I've seen, I have to say, and I have a lot of respect for these guys in the airline industry. They were the first to figure out the value of data, I believe, after deregulation. Now, deregulation happened in '79. I was just a baby
Yeah.
then, but by the time I joined the airline industry in the late '90s, I mean, these guys have figured out what's the value of this data in mainframe because before the deregulation, the government used to say where you fly, how you price, what to do. Then deregulation came, and there's like, well, how do we run an airline? And they figured out, oh my God, there's this data in the mainframe in the back office. Could we use the data to understand, how people book, when they book, with no show and cancellation? You probably know about
Sure.
no show. That's why sometimes the flight is overbooked, and they offer you $500 if you take the next flight, whatever,
Right.
because from no show forecasting, that was the first thing they did. But then it became so sophisticated that they understand the flow across network, across a hub, and who do you sell for? Do you take two local flights or someone who is basically transitioning? How do you price it? It became this whole area of something called revenue management, which is selling the right product to the right consumer at the right time at the right price. Some very sophisticated mathematical whatever. But going back, then eventually they realized the value of CRMs, consumer relationship management. So they start saving the data of Wes, who's in this program, in our loyalty program, how whatever, and what we should offer him versus Joe versus whatever. And it got deeper and deeper. So the other, I would say, vertical that did this very well are retailers. Why do you think when you go to a retailer, you get the frequent shopper card? Because it's a hook to your behavior. Like we said, the email. Oh, you want to get the discount? Rather than paying $10, you're going to pay $8. Everyone is going to say, yes, I want the $8. But no one knows that actually all this data, that actually the loyalty program at retailers, you know what I call it? And I wrote an article on Entrepreneur about it. I don't know if it was on Entrepreneur or a post that I put on LinkedIn. It was actually a data acquisition strategy. that that little card that you get at any retail or whatever, or a number that they give you. This is your loyalty program number, and you can whatever, and you can get on the app. It's a data acquisition strategy. So retailers have been very smart, and also airlines have been very smart very quickly. Of course, I'm not, probably banking has been, but I haven't really worked in banking. But the one thing I would say, do you know that retailers, what's typically the margin of a retailer? It's very small. My understanding is around 1%, 1.5%, 2% if you're lucky. This is on their selling the actual physical products in their store, correct? Or delivering it. What is the margin you think on the data business? It's in the high double digits. It's in the double digits.
Wow.
You make more money. Why do you think the airlines, when you get on an airline now, most airlines provide you the Wi-Fi for free?
Free.
Since when? Why are they doing me a favor? Just there is no free lunch.
Yeah.
The reason because rather than you paying for it for a flight, we prefer to provide it free for you on every flight and collect the data on you. During COVID, many airlines were looking for a loans during COVID,
Yeah.
correct? And you should look at articles about that. And I think I mentioned one of them. I can't remember which airline now for the moment. I don't remember which one, but irrespective, the value of the data when they got the loans was more important than the value of the atoms. What I mean by atoms, the airplane, the gates, the whatever, the actual assets. So how do you think airlines are making money? Airlines are not only selling seats, they are marketers, they are advertisers, they are whatever. So that's how they're making the money. But certainly the airlines is one I can think of. So whenever you get on a flight and say, oh, Wi-Fi is free, you know why this is happening. And why do you get a credit card offer, by the way, Joe?
Yeah.
Because they
With
want to
all those
also get
miles, all those free
yeah,
miles
yeah,
they
I
give
know
you.
it's not. No, they're getting into the credit card business, selling or whatever. That's why the credit card business, the advertising business are significant enough to supplement the actual, if you want to call it, airline business.
That's a great the Wi-Fi example is such a great example because I remember many years ago, that was like the last bastion of charging for Wi-Fi. Like you could literally go to anywhere on the planet and get free Wi-Fi, but the airline was always the last one where you're like, you got to input your credit card and pay whatever stupid. And so for you to say that out loud, I think most people don't even think it. Like, oh, look,
Yeah.
the airlines just started to be nice. I'm like, no, they're not. They just did like you said, they crunched numbers on the ROI. The data was bringing more than the $20 that one idiot was paying for the Wi-Fi on that flight.
Exactly. That you're better off to give it to everyone, that the data that you can collect from them, tie it to the credit card data, tie it to whatever, sell this data, get the 360 view, identify the people that you want to attract that can pay more, whatever, etc. I mean, the other thing that I observed recently, uh, I was actually trying to book an hotel. And I asked a friend to look at the same hotel on their device. And guess what? We
Different
got two
prices.
different prices.
Yeah.
That's called, guess what? And I'm not sure if it's even legal because I'm asking for a product that you have, whatever. I remember way back there was a story about Amazon when they did dynamic pricing that they were offering and it became whatever and they had to retrieve it. It was many years ago. But now I'm observing that how can we take more money from Wes than, I don't know, I'm making this up, Samantha, whoever Samantha is, or more money from Joe than Wes. And this is now manipulating your wallet even. Although, when you go to a store and you want to buy a box of cereal, it should be the same for all of us, no?
Yeah.
Someone was telling me now, I can't remember the name of the retailer. Actually, I do remember, but I don't want to say it to make sure that
For legal
I'm right.
reasons.
But let's just say, but yeah, exactly. But there's one retailer now, they don't put the prices anymore at whatever, that you have to scan. They're testing this. And people tested it. Guess what? Joe is getting a different price than Wes. But that's not right. If I'm buying a box of cereal, we should all have the same right to the same price of the box of cereal. But how are they able to do this? The only way they can do this because they have an understanding of Joe, of Wes, of their preference, of their propensity to pay, and there, guess what? Your share, how much they can have your share of wallet. There's this whole thing called share of wallet. How much they should, and this is not okay. If people are aware of this, they will be like up in arms. Why I'm paid 120 on the same day, on the same moment, for the same hotel room that another friend of mine just sitting next to me is checking?
That's wild. All right, so that's the private sector. Let's get into the government side of things because in the book you write about governments purchasing commercial data instead of getting warrants. Why is that such a dangerous loophole? I mean, just me saying out loud sounds really dangerous. But tell me about that.
Let me put it this way. I actually don't blame the government. If the data is available to marketers and I need the data, why do I need to go and try to get a warrant when every commercial entity on the planet within the US or outside the US can buy the same data? And I give an example. When there was a particular app and, that's available, it was like, why do I need to get a warrant if anyone can buy the data? It simply shows two things, to your point. Data that you would have thought is so personal and you would need a warrant for it. I don't think the government did anything. It just shows you how much the data is available in the marketplace to anyone, including you, Joe. You can start your own company and guess what? You can get this data, license it, whatever. Why do I need to go get the warrant if I can license it from whatever? But it shows you how much correct there is really nothing around, how do you say, in terms of governance, I'm going to call it, correct?
Yeah.
National governance. And I don't want to talk about every state because today we're a hodgepodge of things. Every state is different. This problem or this issue is a federal issue. And I talk about really how we should think of the Federal Trade Commission to become the Federal Data and Trade Commission. We've been fighting, or the FTC, wins a battle and loses two, or whatever it is. They fight, and they're still using tools of I don't know, the 20th century, I'm even going to call it, on how to address all these issues that they think regarding, I don't know, monopoly and things companies shouldn't be doing. But guess what? They should take, in my mind, the SEC approach, which is the Security and Exchange Commission approach. So let me think the way I explain it. The SEC doesn't tell us where to invest our money, do they? No. But what they tell us, we will make sure that the market is fair to you. And what they mean by that the market is transparent, is accountable, that you have protection, that you are respected, and there is equality and respect, correct? So this is what I call TAPER, TAPER, transparency, accountability, protection, equality, respect. I think with the data, we're taking the wrong issue with the big companies. We should give control to every individual to decide what they want to do with their data, their health data, their buying purchase data, or geo data, whatever data they generate, correct, or they create along the way. And the government, the FTC, should be in the business of creating basically this TAPER framework for the data business, and it should be called, honestly, the Federal Data and Trade Commission. We are in an era where all commerce is driven by data. So I know we said the Federal Trade Commission, but it really should be the Federal Data and Trade Commission. Data is essential in any trade that's happening today, correct? So it's called the FDTC, is what I call it in the book, or I suggest. But rather than fighting every company and then score one battle, because what's happening, the companies that benefit from data, they like the FTC approach, because guess what? By the time a PR thing happens and we create one more law to address, so using PII, like with the okay, they would have found another loophole that this data that we said no one will use it or use it in a particular way. It doesn't matter, because you continue this ability. We're playing a losing game. Let the people decide how their data is used. I would like my health data to be used for something good. If I am sick with something, and I think my data will help research, I would love for it if it helps another generation or someone not to suffer perhaps what I had, correct? And I give an example in the book, hypothetical example of someone who decided to do that with their data. But we are all then free to decide how we do with our data. It's not a bad thing, to allow our data, but everyone needs to do it on their terms, using their capability, not, depend on a government to fight one battle just because a story made the news. And by the time, we quiet one story, 5 years later, 2 years later, there's another story. And then, we have another law. No, the data is my own data. It's about my privacy. So I should own it. I should decide with it. Let the government simply put up the framework about transparency, accountability, protection, equality, and respect. In the same way, the government doesn't tell me where to invest my money, but the SEC provide this framework, correct? Fundamentally, that's what they do to make sure that the market is fair.
There's something funny about governments getting involved and intervening in technology. And I've noticed as a lay person from the outside, how it's usually not the US government taking action. It's the governments in Europe. And then because of that, we follow suit. So one of the examples was the cookies thing. If everyone remembers a couple of years ago, I forgot, well, I don't know what the law was, but Europe had passed this sweeping law with cookies regulations that the US never did. But since the tech companies are global, they're like, all right, we're going to do this everywhere. And the other one was the charger. If you remember, everyone complained about the fact that there's like 600 phone chargers. Europe stepped in and said, no, just one, USB-C or nothing. And then all of a sudden, now you're seeing Apple get rid of that stupid Lightning thing here in the States, and it's all USB-C. Everyone's using USB-C to charge. So it's almost like no one wants to say this in America, but like it almost seems like for anything to get done, we have to wait for Europe to do it first.
Well, but I will say, thinking of what Europe has done, and I agree with you that they have done more ahead of us, the approach of giving actually the data back to every citizen is very American. Because the reason I say it's very American, because it's about your freedom, your life, you do what you want to do with your life. The European approach is somewhere in between.
Yeah, it's a little more social.
It's better. Yeah. It's better than what we have today.
Yeah,
but not really a freedom. And an American, you're a free person. You live your life the way you want to do it. You're an individual, whatever. But that's what we're asking for. If the U.S. does this, if we as an Americans do this, and I'm giving every individual their freedom to do what they want to do with their data, we surpass Europe. We surpass Europe because it becomes in the hand of the individual. And actually, that's even a way better thing. Today, where we're stuck in this, let's keep a lot of laws that doesn't really help the consumer as much or the citizen, because the companies really are fighting, lobbying for this data. I'm simply saying, give it back to the individual. This is so American. Then the big tech companies will have to really earn our trust and decide what we do with it and whatever. And of course, I provide a framework. I'm not suggesting in the book that we go to every company and decide each one of them. I do put the framework of how the marketplace will work with that. But I think there's a better solution, better than the European. But today, the European is better than what we have. That I will agree with.
Excellent. All right. So lastly, obviously chapter 3 of the book, which we've done a really pretty good deep dive here today, is you've raised a huge philosophical question. Who actually owns your data? So if you could rewrite, Wes, the rules from scratch tomorrow. So all of a sudden, someone hits you up, Wes, and be like, all right, read your book, love what you're laying down. What would ownership look like in this ideal system that's you've sort of been sprinkling about during our conversation?
That basically, of course, companies will be collecting our data, but only for, for them to do the accounting, to do, the reporting, to understand, what they sold, what they didn't sell, correct? But the minute, you're starting putting that picture, correct, for together of Wes, who bought something at this retailer, did something online, that's very different. To put that full picture or partial picture, doesn't have to be a full picture, but anytime you take it beside your internal purposes as a company, to put a full picture of a citizen, that data cannot be with anyone. This has to be in my control. I decide who have access to me, whatever. So let me ask you, Joe, if you go to a store and you bought something, do they have the rights to come in basically inside your house and bugging you? But that's basically what's happening. Just because, and back to the example I gave in at the beginning of our talk, correct? That you went to the store and someone will ask you for email. Does this give them the right to understand everything about you've done, what you posted online, how are you feeling today, what is your behavior, how much the share of the wallet? No. This is basically bugging you. Oh, on top of it. And then they have all these devices that you have that you talk to. They even know suddenly, just because you gave your email, what did you just say right now? And how could we use AI to whatever? No, of course not. This is like, bugging your home just because you bought a box of cereal. I went to bought a box of cereal, I gave my email, and now I'm completely bugged, monitored 24/7. No, that's not okay. So the minute you take the data from a company, of course, when I'm transacting with a company, they have to collect something for accounting, for finance, for whatever it is. But the minute they step out of this data to do something else, to create the 360 and more, or even partial 360, it doesn't have to be a full 360, then that's not okay.
Excellent. You can read all about it in Data Independence, Reclaiming Privacy in an Era of Evolving Tech. He is Wes Chaar. Wes, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Very good to see you again, Joe. Thank you so much for the opportunity to reach your audience and to talk about this again.
And that'll do it for this episode. If you're an entrepreneur ready to grow your industry recognition as an author and entrepreneur.com contributor, go to authorities.entrepreneur.com.